Welcome to the Monday, March 24th, 2025 special and regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Pacifica. I will start by reading the land acknowledgement. No, I will start by asking the city clerk to do roll call, and then I will continue by reading the land acknowledgement.
Councilmember Wright.
Present.
Councilmember Espinosa.
Here.
Councilmember Beer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bowles.
Here.
Mayor Beckmeyer.
Present. The City of Pacifica acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone for their enduring commitment to Mother Earth. As indigenous protectors of this land, and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. We affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. And Mayor Pro Tem Bowles, will you please lead us in the flag salute? PCT, are we supposed to have anything on our screen at this point? Because we're not seeing anything on what's facing us. They're working on it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm getting signals. Director of PCT.
The cable is out right now. We're trying to talk to the head end of cable.
We're working with. We're on, and we're working with the cable company to figure out the broadcasting. But we are recording. So I would like to turn our attention to the consent calendar. And before we do public comment, I'd like to ask if any council members wish to pull any items for consent.
And Madam Mayor, before the consent calendar, can we just?
Thank you. I skipped right over that. We did, you mean the closed session?
Yes, just that there's no reportable action.
Thank you. No reportable action. Okay, consent calendar.
I'd like to pull item 3 and ask for a presentation from staff, especially since the 2 new council members aren't as familiar with this project.
We're going to pull the item, and we'll talk about what we're going to do with it when we get to it after the consent.
In number 4.
Number 4, is that a question?
Yes, I do have a few questions about that project.
Okay, you want to go ahead with your questions?
Sure. I have a couple of questions because these people that I think are the same people who did some work in my area and also around Pacifica. Most of I don't think they did a good job. And I do have questions. Are they subcontractor or they are the one doing the work themselves?
Pavement Coatings is the company, and they do the work. I don't know if they do sub anything out, and I'll turn to Deputy Director Roland Yip in case he has more details to respond to that.
Okay. Should I ask the other question I have? I have a few.
Sure.
How will the city make sure that the paving works is done correctly? Are there going to be somebody checking on them? Like, if the company already done the project, I know there's few things that they're supposed to do to make it when they're doing the paving, and is there going to be somebody making sure that what they said they're going to do is done? Also, I want to find out if the thickness of the material, because on Inverness, I noticed that their area that they didn't put anything. So it's important to find out what is the thickness of the material they're gonna put in. And let me see another one. So how do we gonna hold them accountable, like if they do? So far, I don't think it's been 2 years, but I'm not sure if if that's a warranty for 2 years. For the new contract, it says there's 25 years repaving and maintenance. And I wanted to find out what maintenance mean, if like they're gonna continue checking on those streets to make sure that they did their job the way it's supposed to do, or if something went wrong, will they go back and fix it?
Yeah, thank you
Okay.
for those questions, and I'll have Deputy Director Yip respond to our quality control procedures, liquidated damages that are built in to the contract, as well as touch on contracting law and our purchasing process that we're constrained by in selection of the contractor.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. Roland Yip, Deputy Director of Public Works / City Engineer. I'll start with how we keep them accountable on the project. We're going to have a full-time staff, maybe 1.5 times staff, doing inspections on this project. The project primarily for this year is going to be a rubber cape seal. So that is 2 layers. The first layer is a slurry, and then the second layer, it's pretty similar. The first layer is the chip seal, second layer is the slurry seal. They're both pretty similar, but they're 2 layers of black coating that we're putting onto the surface. So there's no thickness to check in terms of that material, but we will be checking submittals to make sure we're getting the materials that we have specified in our plans. So where there is a thickness to that is the asphalt material that we place in the ground. It's roughly 3 inches where we remove and replace the asphalt before we do this rubber cape seal. So we will be measuring, we'll go out there with tape measure that, make sure it's compacted properly. The most important thing for asphalt is that they go down hot. So we have to make sure it goes down above 175 degrees. So it has to come relatively hot. Most of the plants are around here, so they do come into the city pretty hot. So that's usually not an issue. And we make sure it has compaction, then they do the slur seal, they do the chip seal, then they do the slur seal. As far as the liquidated damages, since our project from 2 years ago, we have added a new liquidated damage. I come from Daly City, so the parking issues in Daly City there's a lot more cars and a lot more density in Daly City. So we added a liquidated damage I used to use in the city, and that is there's a $1,000 liquidated damage for each block where they post a no parking sign and they do not perform any work. So that's every single day, every single block. And that usually deters contractors from just trying to schedule a lot of paving at once, and they can't get to it, causing residents to move around. They will get charged, and a lot of times when we get phone calls, I let residents know this, that we have accumulated all these liquidated damages, so they didn't move for nothing. We're getting things back for the city. The cost of the contract will go down whenever they post all these no parking signs. Secondly, there's a $500 liquidated damage in the specifications whenever they work without giving hand-delivered notices to the residents 3 days in advance. So those 2 have prevent a lot of issues. We didn't see as many issues last year. We did collect liquidated damages last year as well for our project last year. So yeah, we have staff, 1.5 staff full-time when the paving starts, and we have additional liquidated damages on the project. As far as the bid requirements, so the bids, the requirement comes from the California Public Contracting Code, and this is state law. So bids must be it must be a responsive bid, and then secondly, they must be a responsible contractor. So a responsive bid, there's a couple of things from the contract code, such as 0.5% of the contract. If they have a portion of the work, which is 0.5% of the contract or $10,000, they must list out subcontractors. So most of the time when there's a non-responsive bid, this is the most common occurrence, is that people don't list out the correct subcontractors on the project. There's also bonding requirements, insurance, and they must fill out, some of the forms appropriately. They also must follow our plans and specifications. So that constitutes a responsive bid, and that's not to get confused with a responsible contractor. So, for example, on this paving project, for example, is a good example to define what is a responsive bid versus a responsible contractor. So the two lowest bids, SNH and Buildcorp, they have submitted bids, and we are not saying that they are not a responsible contractor. We are just saying that the bids are not responsive, and there's a slight nuance there. In our specifications require a certain amount of references, which equal the scope and the size of the project, which they were not able to provide. And that makes their bid not responsive. I am allowed to request that information at any time, and I've requested it before we award the bids. So because they were not able to provide those references and projects, they have been deemed not responsive. The third contractor, Pavement Coating, there was a bid protest from the fourth contractor that they did not fill out the form that we provided for the subcontractor. So we reviewed this with the city attorney's office, and there is no legal requirement for Pavement Coatings to use specifically our form. So they use a separate form. Some contractors may do this because they may have their project lists are very long, or they may do that for their references. But inherently, their form that they provided was missing a signature, which is not required by the Public Contract Code. And they are not missing also any information with what they have supplied. Therefore, their bid is still considered responsive, even though they don't use our form. So that was all reviewed very thoroughly, and that is why the recommendation was to deem the first and second bid not responsive. Not that they are not responsible contractors, we do not know that, but then the third bid, we rejected the bid protest, and we deemed the bid responsive, and we are recommending the award to Pavement Coatings.
My last question. Was the same job assigned to, I believe, 2022 and 2023? Was the same assignment, or this one is different? Is much better job, or it's the same? Because the work they did wasn't that. It didn't have good quality. It wasn't a good quality work. And I also would like to maybe you guys to go back and check and see if we can still fix those things that they didn't do properly.
So if the project was from 22-23, unfortunately the warranty period has ended on that project. We only hold a 1-year warranty on our capital improvement projects. So this same contractor did work on the Manor area in 23-24. Now there was an issue on Manor Drive, and their gravels, and it was because their mixing of the gravels caused a lot of the larger size aggregates to fall on the bottom of their stockpiles. And because of that, towards the end of their projects, and this was Manor Drive, that had larger aggregates getting paved, it caused a lot of those aggregates to pop off. So this contractor, when they were notified of this, they came back and they had to wait several months because the summer was over and we were heading into the winter. They came back the next year and they repaved all of Manor Drive. So the Pavement Coatings did uphold their warranty for that project from 2 years ago.
My concern is that it takes so long to do any work on the street, in the hassle that the community had to go through. And if it's not well done, it's just a waste of, I will say, energy and time. And since we don't have a lot of money, so it will be good to, if we just hire them, let's make sure that they do a good job for that project. So that you guys monitor and make sure that they do a good job.
yeah.
And it sounds like you have staff assigned for that purpose.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And we will be very thorough with our QA/QC. A lot of it is going to be our responsibility as well to QA/QC while we're out there, and we will do that for this
Greg.
project.
Thank you. I have two lights. Is it okay if we continue with questions? I want to make sure we're not getting into deliberations. Okay, questions. Councilmember Wright.
Could you just educate me on the difference between repaving, chip seal, and slurry seal, please?
Yes. So the chip seal has a lot more aggregates in there. So typically, for most cities, not saying for all of them, but they do not typically just put a chip seal down. So chip seals, when you drive your car over it, you're going to feel it. It's very, very bumpy. So that's why most people do a combination of the chip seal and the slurry seal, which has a lot less aggregate. So it's just the ride quality. The chip seal adds a little bit of a structural component, so that's why a slurry seal by itself will only last maybe 7 years, but we're saying the rubber cape seal can last up to 15. And we have seen that. I've heard from other agencies such as City of San Mateo. They have done some from 15 years ago, which have held up. And this is the backbone of our paving, 5-year paving plans, because we don't have enough. We're backlogged several $1 million from our PTAP report. So in order to maintain our streets, we have to do the chip seal plus the slurry seal. So the reason why a lot of cities do not do the chip plus the slurry seal, which they call a cape seal, it's kind of confusing. I kind of envision like a cape on a superhero with a cookie on the back. It's like a chip seal with a slurry seal. That's what a cape seal is. It's a combination of those two. So the reason why cities typically have not done just the cape seal is because it triggers curb ramps in the city. So when it triggers curb ramps, it's not as cost effective to do the project, and that's why a lot of people, like Daly City, a lot of local agencies have chosen just to either do a slurry seal, so you don't have to do the ramps, or you just do a complete mill and overlay of the projects. But this has been working for us. We'll do the curb ramps, and then we'll do the cape seal.
And the repaving?
So the repaving is something that is done when is recommended in Street Saver. So there's a pavement condition index that we rate the pavement. It ranges from 0 to 100. So you can only do a slurry seal if it is above 75. So once it falls below that, it's not as effective to do this type of treatment, because the second you put that black coating, the oil down, the cracks will appear almost immediately. And when streets are completely alligator, you cannot just put the cape seal down onto the street. So if it's isolated or small patches of areas, small squares that we can just go in and repave 3 inches and then still do the chip seal or cape seal, then we will do that. If it cannot do that, the whole street's completely alligator, then the Street Saver is going to recommend for a complete mill and overlay of the project, which is a repaving. Much, much more expensive. It's kind of comparing like oil change to your car. Like, why are we doing this slurry seal on streets that are still in good condition? I oftentimes compare it to doing maintenance on your car, where the slurry seal is kind of like your oil change. If you just choose not to do an oil change, then you're looking at an engine replacement, which would cost thousands of dollars, and that is what a repaving is.
So it's a cost-saving measure. My last question is, this is a prevailing wage job, is that correct?
Yes, all of our specifications will require for the project to be paid in prevailing wages. We give them a project account code from the Department of Industrial Regulations, and they will regulate the payments of prevailing wages. We will also check and make sure that they are paying the prevailing wages before we issue out invoices. And so, yes, we will make sure that the project is paying prevailing wages on the project, and they're required to do so.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Bowles.
Thank you, Roland. I have a few questions, too. So this company did the both District 1 and District 2 paving. Did they recently do the ones in Pedro Point also?
No, that was a different contractor. It was called VSS.
Okay, and did they provide a bid for this work now, or?
They did, yes. VSS did provide a bid.
Okay, and they were one of the higher ones, I'm assuming. I
Yes,
remember the
yeah.
name. Okay. So I really appreciate your attention to the public notification and communication. That was a huge issue with pavement coatings in my district, and so I'm glad to hear that there's damages and so forth, because it's not just the disturbance to residents, but it's all the extra staff time that we ended up paying for, right, to manage that process. So I think the contract ended up costing us a lot more money. For that project, we used CWG as the project manager that, and it was that person whose cell phone number was given to residents. Is that true for this project too?
Oh, from 2 years ago? Yes, it was CSG, and it was a third party who was helping us out with the construction management. We have since taken that in-house, and I think we will do a better job doing it in-house than giving it to a consultant,
Right,
because we
okay.
know the residents and we'll be a lot more responsive.
Okay, and so if you start to see paving that's not to specs, like at Manor, you can catch it early and hopefully too, which obviously that meant a lot more staff time that, again, we were paying extended contract for the first time around. Okay, and then the other issue that came up on that project were trees that overhung the right-of-way. And so just want to understand what the process is about that. I know one resident was like given no notice and they were starting to just chop his tree. So because they couldn't get their equipment underneath it. So what is the normal process? Is there an arborist that comes out and notifies the owner, if they have a tree that is impacting the ability to do the work?
Yes, the contractor should be notifying us. We're going to follow the tree ordinance, and we'll do the trimming procedures as required. We'll mention this in our pre-construction meeting with the contractor to make sure they're aware of this, as well as the
Okay.
other.
Yeah, because I think that wasn't part of the original notices to residents, right? It was a whole separate thing where they, I'd appreciate you putting that on your list.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
But we're very lucky to have you rolling.
Yeah.
and we appreciate your diligence on the
Well, thank you very much.
street paving.
Council members?
Yeah.
For the consent calendar, I also have an amendment to item number 5. that I'd
Item
like to read
5?
into the record. Yes.
And can you reference a packet page, or do you want to go to that right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask, it's going to be difficult for me tonight because I don't have a printed copy of the agenda. And so when we are going to different sections, if we could be super clear about where we're going, what questions we're asking, and so I have time to catch up.
Of course.
I'm happy to share.
So, item 5, with regard to the garbage collection,
Yes, so item number 5 on consent is the ordinance that was introduced at the March 10th meeting. There was an incomplete whereas clause, so as an administrative correction, we're just completing that whereas clause so that it's a full clause. Packet page 91 begins the ordinance, and the correction is to the third whereas clause, which says, whereas the city's response to R4 of the grand jury reports indicates that, and that's where it ended, we're adding R4 will be implemented in the future, semicolon, and then continuing with the remainder of the whereas clause and now therefore.
okay. Everybody got that? Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I was wondering why I had that out of order page in my packet this week. I was like, oh, it's just a little out of order. Makes sense now. All right. So we are pulling item 3. We've had questions on item 4. And we need to do public comment on consent items not including item 3. Right? Yes. No. Yes. Yes. Okay. So, if there are any members of the public that wish to comment on consent items not including item 3, and I do have 2 cards for consent item 4. Suzanne Moore and Cliff Lawrence had submitted cards in advance. Oh, and here's one more coming. I don't know if that's what it's for.
Good evening, everyone. Suzanne Moore from District 2. And item 4 addresses continued street repaving. Is that the one? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And
Item
on
4.
surveys conducted in 2022 and 2024, Pacifica street repairs tied as number 1 with housing and climate concerns. And I, for one, appreciate the work the city has done to improve our streets. However, I know the council has heard multiple complaints of the quality of work by the current vendor, and I wonder if it might be possible to seek further bids. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cliff Lawrence.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. I was a little surprised to actually see that we have a consent item that involves, say, up to $1.8 million. That's a significant item. We see that it has already drawn a number of questions, that there is a lot of interest in it. First question I have is, were there any local vendors who bid on this? In your bid scoring process, at least is the way I remember it, did you give points credit, some value to local vendors? Are there other things that you give credits for? I'm a little distressed to hear that we labeled this vendor as satisfactory performance when we've already discussed this evening that there was an issue last time. Fortunately, that got worked out, and I think we would all hope that isn't repeated. But the question in my mind, isn't there somebody out there do a better job if we've got a problem with this vendor? And I don't know that we do, but I do encourage you to give a value to local vendors that keeps the money in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant City Clerk, are there any comments on the Zoom?
There's one raised hand. It is for Leo Leon.
Leo, are you commenting on items on the consent agenda?
Yes, I'm commenting on item 4.
Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, council members, staff. So, paving is a big issue in Pacifica. There's a lot of communities that, have very low pavement index numbers. For instance, on Pedro Point, Olympian Way, we have a 0 probably, we have amongst the lowest ratings. And there's other areas that do as well. So the point I'm trying to get is that we should really ensure that there is adequate review of the work. And Roland did an excellent presentation and answering questions and providing information. I think when he gets into the actual performance of the work, he mentioned that there was a mix that was not done properly in the Manor area where my daughter lives. And we know that there was problems with that. They did come back a year later, but that's good. But it shouldn't have happened in the first place. That should have been preventable, and somebody should have ensured that the mix was correct. So the point I'm trying to reach here is that maybe there's more we can do on our side, either through having our staff or a designated third party that overlooks and certifies. I know a lot of building uses those types of personnel to certify that things are done properly through every step of a project. So I'm very happy out here that we finally are on the 5-year pavement plan. And many streets in Pacifica are receiving pavement for the first time. So it's really important to us that have low pavement index numbers to ensure that the city, gets the bang for the buck, that we don't be, I guess the old saying is, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. We want to make sure that we get what we paid for. So that's all I have to say. And of course, I'll be watching the work as it proceeds in our area here. And I'm sure everybody that lives in their neighborhood will be doing the same. So thank you, and I'll say goodbye here.
Thank you very much. I did receive one additional card in the chamber, and that is Kimberly Finale.
Good evening, council members. Thanks for taking my card. Sorry, I was a few seconds behind there. Kimberly Finale, Pacifica resident, District 3, here this evening speaking as a private resident. I just want to begin by saying how much I appreciate all of you, your time and your effort to get this project going. The residents, are really, everybody loves to see pavement projects happening in their neighborhoods, and I'm included in that. I would like to just kind of revisit the last project that was done in the Manor area. The complaint that was common in my neck of the woods upon completion, or so-called completion of the project, was yes, the aggregates that were left behind in the gutters. And not only were they aggregates, but they were aggregates covered in asphalt. And we all know that asphalt has an oil base. And the thing is that the street cleaners don't clean the gutters, they clean the middle of the street. So when the street cleaners come along, they're not getting the asphalt covered aggregates out of the gutter. And the wind is blowing heavily, the rain can happen anytime it's blowing, and the thing is too, is the storm guards, they're not very well protected, and they're often not even cleaned. And so the drains is what I'm talking about, and the gutters that go into the storm drains, which go out to the ocean. And so these asphalt covered aggregates are literally going directly into the stream system, which is directly going to the ocean. It's not a very far travel. And so that is my concern. And for 1.8 million, there's a lot of hardworking contractors around here. I'm not so sure we want to just go with this contractor that we've already had to call back. The last time around, we had to call them around for warranty work, and I'm not sure they were ever able to fully clean up that asphalt-covered aggregate. I've got serious concerns about the effect on the ocean and the ocean life after the contract last, worked in our area. So I would just ask to consider that maybe we just slow down a little bit and make sure that we're hiring some environmentally conscious contractors. You've got a lot of people here that care a lot about the environment, and the people that we're paying to do this work for us, we would ask that these folks are equally as concerned about the environmental effects as we are. I know that construction isn't an environmentally friendly industry. I myself work in the industry, and so I fully get it, but I think that we can find some really conscious humans to do the project, at an equivalent rate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Assistant City Clerk, any further hands?
There are no other raised hands.
All right, then. I'm going to close public comment on the consent agenda. And may I ask one additional question on this item, then? Thank you. So much for walking all the way. Thank you. So could you please touch on the issue of post-cleanup, post-paving cleanup? How is that accomplished, and what is the expectation?
So the contractor, they do have their own street sweepers, and they do need to clean up the slurry seal coating that does have some residual aggregates. It's common for this to happen. So, in addition to this, we can request for our own street sweepers and, during their sweeps to try to do a little bit of better coverage and get into the gutters and clean all of this up. But this is unfortunately a common residual effect of a slurry seal that some of the aggregates do kind of come off, and it's common for it to do this.
So they clean up after, I can't imagine they do it right after because it's still wet, but they clean up after they complete their work, and our street sweeping schedule then follows on after that.
So that's correct. Yeah, they will, after the slurry cures, they do need to do some cleanup. But what I have seen, we can spec it to make them do this. But because we have our street sweepers out there anyways, it does take several rounds for the street sweepers to clean it up. So that's what I have seen, is that the street sweepers from the cities will clean this up afterwards with our street sweepers, because it does take a little bit, several rounds before it can get cleaned up. Now, if we would like the contractors to be responsible for this, we can always make contractors do whatever we need them to do. There's just a cost to it.
Right.
If we want to do something, it's more work. We want to make them, slow them down, so that we can get proper notification. We can do that, and we've done that by adding the liquidated damages. But there's a cost to all these things that we do, because it will make the bids go higher. So there's always a cost to it. And we already have street sweepers out there. We have a street sweeping contract that we just issued, and we've been doing street sweeping. Our street sweepers can clean it up.
And that's what I was just going to ask, if I may. I know you were reworking that schedule because we had to adjust it for certain areas. So if the Public Works, and in your work in engineering, if you can look at the overlap between that schedule and this and the paving schedule to make sure that we have, that it's scheduled in a way to take advantage of both of those contracts that we're paying for.
Oh, yeah, definitely, we can take a look at the schedule.
Thank you.
And just as a follow-up to that, so, when do the cars come back and park? Because, to Kimberly's point, the street sweepers, I often see are in the middle of the road and not cleaning the edges, which is where the gravel, the roads are, curved down to the gutter, and so if they're not cleaning the gutter, they're not picking up that gravel. So,
Yes. So
at what point do they do their cleaning, and is there still no parking?
So they do not come back and do no parking for their street sweeping. They'll be sweeping the middle of the street. That part we can look into is to see if we can get some parking signs out there so that our street sweepers can cover some of the areas. But if we, typically if you had no parking, then we would be able to capture everything in the gutter. But because we don't have that, that's why there's so much of it in the gutter. So we would have to try to address that with the project.
That would be great if you could, or have them sweep by hand 20 feet from a storm drain or so, right? Those critical spots where those are going in. And just to follow up on I think it was Leo's question or Cliff's question, do we give any preference for local bidders or?
So with the California Public Contract Code, we are required to award it to the lowest responsive bid and responsible contractor. So having a responsive bid, it just means that you have to. There's a couple of requirements in the contract code: bonding, subcontractors list, following our specs. It's a couple of things, and it's harder to be a non-responsive bid these days because everything is done through a website where there's a panel. You have to submit and attach your bond. So physically, you can't submit it without attaching a bond, whereas people in the past might forget to put it in, and then that makes their bid non-responsive because there'll be a package that goes to, City Clerk Coffee, and they open the envelope and find out, a bid has forgotten to do that. So their requirement really only has to be a responsive bid. Now, to deem them a not responsible contractor, they would either be incapable of doing the work, which is not very common for a city to deem, or there's some violations on their licensing, either with the DIR or contractor licensing board. So if they have a responsive bid and they're a responsible contractor, we must award to the lowest responsive bid, which with the rejection of the first and second bidders, Pavement Coatings is the next responsive bid on this project. We, as a requirement from the California Public Contract Code, we must advertise and advertise in the newspaper. It's public to everyone. Everyone can bid on the project, and then whoever is a responsive bid, we will award to them, and it's a state law requirement. Now, if this was a federally funded project, with a federally funded project, and we have one for the Sharp Park pedestrian improvements, there are certain federal requirements which require us to award a certain percentage of the project to a disadvantaged business enterprise. And sometimes those could be local, but it's mainly that they meet certain they have to have the certification that they're a DBE. So with that project, then there are certain types of those requirements that must be met in addition to what is in the public contract code. But other than that, if they can do the project, they have a responsive bid, we must award.
Understood.
Okay,
All right, thank you. Interim Director Sun, did you have something else you wanted to add on this item? I noticed you were stretching your legs.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, Roland is doing a heck of a job answering all these questions, and the question about local participation, that's typically reserved for a qualification-based process, which we do use that when we select consultants, but in this case, it's a contracting bid. So just like what Roland says, if it's a federally project, some of that may come into consideration.
But because it's a state law, we have to follow the parameters of under the law.
That's correct. So.
Thank you. All right, council. If there are no further questions or comments on the consent items, minus item 3.
I move that we approve the consent calendar minus item 3 with a correction, oops, was that to item 5?
Yes.
So whereas the city's response to R4 to the grand jury report indicates that R4 will be implemented in the future, and.
I'll second.
Please vote. All right, then.
With the motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Bowles and seconded by Councilmember Beer for the consent calendar minus item number 3, and with number 5 as corrected, passes unanimously.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Because item 3 was pulled, we're going to take up item 3 next.
Yes.
After that, I want to have a discussion among the council about amending the order of the agenda for tonight. But right now, we're going to take up item 3.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, item 3. Where's my paper? Oh, it looks like it's Roland and Lewis again. So, I mean, our Director Yip and Deputy Interim Director Sun.
Mayor Beckmeyer, yeah. Kevin
Did you want to
Woodhouse,
start out?
City Manager. Well, I was going to, staff is available to provide, a verbal overview of this item and the BBERT project, but if Councilmember Bowles had specific questions, then we can make sure to include those, because obviously that would focus the overview.
Yeah, well, I think, one, I'm asking for the overview for our new council members because I had asked when to share the grant application, and you said that that was shared with council, and I'm not sure when and if that's something that the new council members have gotten to. I don't remember seeing it personally, so, but I might have missed it. But,
It was, I think it was my oversight that I didn't forward that along with the responses to questions. It was intended to be in that same email, but we were very backlogged in getting those responses to questions done today. So apologize for that, for the oversight. So we can describe what's in this application.
I think that would be helpful.
This is for phase 2C of the BBERT project.
That's,
Yes.
I thought it was 2B.
No, 2B, no, this is This is a grant application for 2C. 2B's already been authorized to apply for by the council, and we've applied for that and are waiting to hear about award of that.
Oh,
Okay,
well, I'm very,
so 2C.
which is for, yeah, okay, we'll wait for the staff. Thanks.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, Roland Yip again, Deputy Director of Public Works, Nice City Engineer. So we would like to recommend to adopt the resolution entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of Pacifica, authorizing the submittal of grant applications to the California State Parks Division of Boating and Waterways for the Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project. The project will replace Pacifica's failing seawall and deep foundation seawall, rock scour apron, and sand replacement, and sand placement to protect critical infrastructure from coastal erosion and sea surges. The BBRP is a multi-phase project, city-led project that aims to create multi-benefit solution to the Beach Boulevard corridor in the historic West Sharp Park neighborhood. The city has been working to advance the BBRP project with more recent action of the council occurring on November 28th, 2022, when it was approved for an amendment with GHD Inc., the coastal engineers, to begin the second phase of the project, more specifically Phase 2, titled Phase 2A, the preliminary project design. And so following public input from Phase 1, we decided that the hybrid system was the most cost-effective project, which included a seawall, rock scour apron, and beach nourishment. On March 28th, 2024, the City Council authorized the submittal of a similar application to DBW for Phase 2B, which was the environmental document phase. And we're still awaiting the results of that grant application, which will be finalized by June of this year. And so right now, we are applying for a $2.5 million to fund Phase 2C, which is the third phase of the design. Currently, we are in Phase 2A. So Phase 2C is the permitting and final design of BBRP, and this includes completing 100% plan specifications and estimates, the PS&E, and securing the regulatory permits. So with this grant, there is a 50% match, and so the resolution commits the city to provide the requiring matching funds of $1.25 million, and this match will come from the Disaster Accounting Fund. So just an update of the project. So currently, we are in Phase 2A, which is the 35% design and cost estimating, and then we also are wrapping up the notice of preparation and scoping for the environmental impact report. So that will be completed by around July of this year. So in terms of timing, that falls very closely to when we will find out about DBW on the next phase of the project. So we are planning to bring an update to the project back to City Council, similar to what we did in Phase 1. And at that time, we will decide how we would like to proceed on the next phase of the project, pending this grant, whether or not we receive it from DBW. So staff is available for any additional questions.
Did you say around July?
Around July, correct.
Okay. Councilmember Bolt.
Sorry, in the response to questions, I said in the August time frame for the summary. July,
You're so optimistic.
we take the second
right.
meeting off in July, and so July is more
August.
impacted. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I have a few more questions, if you don't mind. So for Phase 2B, which is the environmental documentation, that is a phase that takes a while, right? They're still developing the design and then doing all the EIR work. My understanding, that was at least a year or year and a half worth of work. Is that correct?
That's fair to say. It could take up to 18 months, if not a little bit more. So the next phase is mainly primarily focused on the EIR. Phase 2C, we will complete the design and bring it to 100%.
Right, so, okay, but we still have at least, we still have a few months of presentations of this project, maybe some feedback, and then another year and a half So close to 2 years before we'd be starting this other work that we're applying for this grant and putting in disaster funds now. It would be close to 2 years before this work would start that you're asking us to approve.
That's correct. Yeah, it would have to happen after the environmental report is complete.
Okay, and does the Coastal Commission review it at that point, or does they review it when we have the full set of construction drawings?
So they will review in phase 2C when we have 100% design and we go through the Coastal Commission permitting. But that's not to say that they are not allowed to review it in the EIR. So they're allowed to, as an interested agency, they can provide comments to us, and they are allowed to provide comments ahead of the public as well. So they will be provided the report ahead of time for their review and commenting, and then we will adjust our comments. In terms of our coordination with the Coastal Commission, we have had 3 meetings with them for this phase alone, and there's several high-level comments just with the studies and analysis. But in addition to that, they asked us about a portion of the north end to pull it back and move it so it doesn't go into the coast as much, and we have done that with the project.
Okay, but obviously the council hasn't seen any of that yet, so that'll be coming up later this year, as you said. And then for phase 2B, I know we approved the grant. How much are we? What is our cost share for that one?
The cost share is, not to make things confusing, but it's the same. So it was $2.5 million for phase 2B. So that one, it's the same grant, but a different fiscal year, so it's also a 50% cost share. So the numbers are the same, $1.25 million of a local share for both 2B and 2C.
If we're granted this grant for 2B, then we need to come up with that money out of the disaster fund.
That's correct, unless we can find another local match,
Okay.
which we do try to find as well.
Right. And then when do you see the grant for 2C coming forward that we would have to pay this additional $1.25 million?
So it sounds like, we applied last year, and then it took them around a year to review the applications. So I foresee possibly around a year and a half where we would have to, get an agreement in place.
And by committing to this money now, are we definitely committing to that in a year and a half from now? Or if things change financially and our priorities change, we have the opportunity to review that again?
I'm going to ask to correct me if I'm incorrect here, but until you sign the agreement, you haven't committed the funds. This is also a resolution to allow us to submit the application.
Is that your understanding, City Manager? I thought I was hearing differently.
I don't think the city would have to obligate the money until we receive the grant, obviously, and are signing the agreement to move forward with the work. Obviously, in this type of project and the kind of continuous fundraising strategy that's required for these huge infrastructure projects, it behooves the city to be lining up and having commitment and funding for those as far in advance as possible, because that brings clarity and direction to the project. But it's not obligated until it's signed.
Okay. I don't want to deliberate on this side of public comments.
Any other questions from the council? Okay. I have one card on this item. So I'm going to open public comment on consent item number 3 and call Suzanne Moore.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Suzanne Moore, again from District 2. I haven't moved. Honorable council members and staff, Item number 3 addresses grant application for funds for BBURP and simultaneously commits the city to provide the required matching funds. I've heard that we might have a little time here. It's this latter proposal, withdrawal of disaster funds, that I oppose. Although Sharp Park protection of infrastructure is a great concern for Pacificans, I feel I have not been presented a plan that clearly tells me the following. How much will the plan cost Pacifica? What is the projected lifespan of what we invest in the project? What impact will it have on other locations in Pacifica? Until I can see a clear path forward and can weigh costs and benefits, I can't condone taking monies from our disaster fund. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a card from Kimberly Finale.
Good evening again, council members. Kimberly Finale, Pacifica resident, District 3, here this evening speaking as a private citizen. Thank you again for your time and effort on this topic. I also, again, need to express my concern regarding throwing disaster funds. We're continuing to spend our precious disaster funds on shoring up the edge of a continent. I've said it before, I'll say it again, we're literally throwing cash into the ocean. We still have time to plan, to pull back infrastructure from the coast. That is the way to avert a disaster, not throw money at it. What disaster funds will be available when an imminent and unexpected disaster actually hits? If we keep chipping away at we don't have much of a disaster fund. To throw another $1.5 million at this wall, we need to plan for, there's still time. Just keep throwing money at this, when we can plan an alternative and save our precious disaster fund. We're not going to have any left when a disaster unexpectedly hits and lots of people are in need. Lots of people are going to be in need when a major disaster hits this community. And where will our funds be? Planning for a seawall at the edge of a continent. We need to conserve our disaster funds. Find another way. I just feel that we're asking for a disaster by spending these funds on something that we can plan another way. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cliff Lawrence.
Hi, Cliff Lawrence here. Just a quick one. We recently mentioned the emergency funds, I believe, obliquely one time after an executive session. And the gist of that was, I believe it was pretty much implied in session that the 2.4 that we owe for the court settlement is going to come out of that fund too. So there was a query that night about what the balance was of that fund. My memory is $7 million. And I share Kim's concern with if we keep targeting this, will we have a fund for the purpose which it was intended? Thank you.
Thank you. And I am about to receive a card from Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I am Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick of Pacifica. It is getting late in the evening for a consent agenda before we get to the regular agenda. Nonetheless, this is important. Right, we're not committed to putting that money toward a grant application we don't have until we have it. Right. So I think what's occurring to me is the armoring along the pier, I believe, has a shelf life of 5, maybe 10 years. And so as we're talking about disaster accounting, as soon as that armoring along the pier goes, not an engineer, seems like that might begin a cascading effect where the costs incurred to try to shore up that disaster, if we don't have proper armoring, might be a bit more than 2.5 million or whatever the number is on any given day. If this neighborhood here disappears, if the neighborhood west Fairway Park disappears, how much tax revenue disappears with it? We're already talking about giving back a lot of money. I imagine that was a brutal closed session talking about MOUs when we're talking about giving away the money from short-term rentals that, frankly, we need to because the quality of life diminishes for the cost of that money. But MOUs were, I believe, your closed session tonight, if I read properly. So that's before talking about removing sewer infrastructure, streets, convincing people that they ought to move away from their houses, which are no longer going to be protected, probably the electricity infrastructure. So it seems to me that as you all consider how to allocate funds, doing so in the most balanced way possible to account for both protecting the people along with trying to find those natural adaptive solutions so that we can remain a city for as long as possible, which I believe ultimately is what you council are tasked with, would seem to be prudent at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the last card I have. Are there hands raised for the Zoom
We have
call-in?
one raised hand. It is for Summer Lee.
Summer Lee, if this is for item 3, please go ahead.
It is. Hi, Council. This is Summer Lee. Yes, to Tiger's point, that's why healthy cities plan ahead. This wall was was at some point considered to be $150 million. It shrank overnight to $80 million, miraculously, and that wall was not going to last for 30 to 50 years, said the consultants. So I think we're troubled by the disaster fund because that is for short-term disasters, and we're also troubled that there's no long-term planning. And I think the community would feel better because we're going to be the ones probably taxed for this, because if we read the news, the federal government is in a crisis for funding these things, and we're competing with the whole coast of the country, that we're going to be taxed. And I think if we had a plan about moving our sewage infrastructure inland, that does affect us, then I think we could get more on board. So these little sliding in here and there millions of dollars for a plan that we have no guarantee is actually ever going to happen does not feel good to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another raised hand. It is for Leo Leon.
Leo Leon, if this is for item 3, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for having me speak again on this issue. You know, I'm a big believer in looking at the alternatives, the alternative costs. And so there's been mention of moving the infrastructure. And I think just from a point of information, it would be helpful to know what the cost of moving our sewer and water infrastructure. I know that the sewer main, force main that runs through the golf course is closer up to Clarendon and Francisco. And it crosses the golf course going south at that point. So it's not like you're going to have to move the entire line going south. So I think it would be helpful to know the costs and if there's any grants available for those moves versus other grants that are available for other reasons. So taking an overall broad stroke look at these alternatives before we commit with time and energy. The other issue I want to bring up is I know in the last couple of years I circulated a thesis that was done on the marine terrace that runs from Muscle Rock to Laguna Salada. And the geomorphology there indicates that that entire landmass, the bluffs included on Palmetto, South, are crumbling. And you can see that every day, what the loss is there. And that includes Beach Boulevard, the so-called picnic area we have. If you look at it now, it's totally bare and open to the sunlight. And you can see the erosion and what's happening there just with natural weather patterns. So I just want you to think in a broader context of what we're proposing and what the reality of the geomorphology is there and what's going to happen in the long run as a course of nature. And we see it, we live with it. Those of us that walk the beaches and hike the cliffs and the trails, we see that there's some trails that don't exist anymore. Things that were there aren't there anymore. And Pacifica, to some extent, has to deal with the reality of what is happening before our own eyes. So I'll leave you with that thought and trust that you'll do some more exploration before making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other raised hands.
Thank you, and I've received one additional card from Ed Ochi.
Council members, staff, Ed Ochi speaking as a resident of Pacifica. I want to bring the focus back on, from the reading of this document, it's simply a resolution for the grant application. Eventually, if, and that's a big if there, if you're awarded the grant, then you would have to come back and you're agreeing that you would have to fund, you would have to put up a certain amount of money out of city disaster funds. But that's another check there. First of all, you have to clear the grant. Before that, we have another grant for the previous phase of the project that hasn't been approved or denied yet. So by simply stopping because of an issue of cost, when this is all theoretical, that's bad. What you need to be doing is you need to be looking, you need to keep projects in the pipeline. Your grant application is going to take, I think I heard, 1.5 years. That gives you another 1.5 years to still be looking at alternatives. It's been mentioned about the costs and not having exact cost or a solid cost in relocating sewer infrastructure and infrastructure off of Beach Boulevard. I looked at the estimates that were come up for, I believe it was phase 1B of the project. Those struck me as being ridiculously low. And so we need a solid idea of the alternative costs as well as. But if you don't keep your projects in the pipeline, and again, this is simply a grant application. It's not committing for money. That if you get the grant, then, if I understand correctly, it's when you ink the deal for that grant, you agree to the terms of the grant, then you're committing city funds. But we're not at that point yet. We still have to get the grant. So I'd say that you're getting way ahead of yourself when you start talking about a lot of other what ifs. We're going to be spending money. We may not get the grant. So I'd like you to kind of keep focus on just what this actual resolution is. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further cards, and there are no further hands, so I'm closing public comment on this item and bringing it back to council. For discussion, and deliberation, Mayor Pro Tem Bowles, your light is on, but I don't remember.
For that, I just turned it on.
It's new light. Okay. I'm going to newly turn it off.
I think the part that's confusing is the staff report fiscal impact section, which says, adopting the resolution commits the city to provide the required matching funds of $1.25 million for the shoreline erosion control program should the grant be received. And then the city's matching funds would come from the disaster accounting fund. So it says it shall commit. So
It says it shall commit should the grant. Correct?
Right, but
You just read it.
But that's not what they were telling us. If they were telling us if we got the grant, we can still decide. This says if we get the grant, we've committed. So I think the language is really super important because there's so many questions about the project.
So again, what I said earlier, that we're not committing the funding till we sign on the agreement with Department of Boating and Waterways. Should the council decide at that time that we're not going to sign and accept the grant, then that would be a decision the council would make. Of course, if the resolution did not say that we were going to commit the matching funding, we wouldn't get the grant. That's the way grants work. You have to commit to matching funding, and you pay it when you sign the agreement.
I also think I would just like to, through the mayor. I also think, I just want to comment on, taking the time to look at adaptation strategies, which is what we're going to be doing as soon as our local coastal land use plan comes back, that we're going to spend a lot of time looking at adaptation strategies. And so I don't want the community to think that just because we're putting in a grant application, that we're not going to be looking at adaptation strategies.
So, I'm just reading the resolution carefully because it doesn't have the same language that the fiscal impact in the staff report says. So which makes me more comfortable. It says the city council formally approves the submittal of the application for grant funding. Yeah, it's the language in the staff report that was more concerning. And I just have to explain, I work in construction. I can't tell you how many projects I've seen, big, huge hotels and resorts, that we spend so much money on design and so forth, and then they get canceled at the last minute, or we can't get funding at the last minute. And that's why we have all these checks and balances along the way on the project. And honestly, I thought this money was for 2B, which is the environmental review, which, after we get a presentation, you all haven't even seen the project necessarily, right? You weren't involved in the public discussions. I'm sure new council members haven't either. There might be some changes to that. There's supposed to be a new cost estimate provided as part of that, so we can start to understand. I'm hearing that there's less and less money for hard armoring. And so I think, and the other thing that was supposed to be done earlier that now they've put off to 2B is actually understanding the impacts of the seawall to the communities of Shoreview and to the berm because seawalls cause the reflection. And so we don't even know that yet. So for me, committing money to 2C for construction drawings, which is a huge part of the work, before we know the environmental impacts and if this project is even feasible as it is, that's really concerning. Given all that, the fact that we aren't committing this money now, I'm okay submitting the grant application, but the staff report was very confusing to me.
And your concerns are duly noted, and I'm hearing the same concerns coming from different parts of the community. I think Councilmember Beer's points are well taken about having our LCLUP, as we've been putting these things in line, one after the other. We will be having a much broader discussion about adaptation strategies because that's part of the plan. We have to include that, and so we'll be looking at all of the coast and all of those parts. So while I agree that this is an armoring project, it's also a hybrid project. So there are different elements and aspects to it. It has changed over time, and it is appropriate for us to have a broader discussion when we get to that point. In my opinion, it's also appropriate for us to be seeking funding so that we are able to get to that point. I just saw your light. I'm so sorry. Councilmember Wright.
No problem at all. Regardless of what happens with the vote, I think what has occurred here is staff has demonstrated to us that they are actually thinking a few steps down the road. And I, for one, appreciate the fact that they're thinking a few steps down the road and offering us a chance to make this decision earlier in the process as opposed to what I'm more used to, which is a little bit later in the process. So it gives us the time, like you said, to explore other options and to have that luxury of time. I appreciate their forethought and their diligence in doing so.
And then maybe other sources of money instead of the disaster fund, right? I mean, that's a scary thing. and it's scaring our community, it's scaring us. And so, yeah, those are conversations that we absolutely need to have.
Councilmember
Agree with that.
Espinoza?
I agree with Mary. So I think maybe wait until we get closer to getting the grant, and then we can discuss more and figure out other source to get the money and leave the disaster fund there in case we need it.
I'd like to move that we approve the item as staff suggested.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
One more vote. Like, there we go. And with the motion made by Councilmember Wright and seconded by Mayor Beckmeyer, item number 3 passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. That concludes our consent agenda at 8:20 p.m. Okay, moving on. Public comments for items not on the agenda this evening.
Can we talk about
Oh, right, I'm so sorry.
reorganizing the
I
agenda?
said I was going
Thank
to
you.
discuss that, but
If you don't
sorry,
mind
it
me,
got a little
if
buried.
you don't mind me saying.
Oh, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to suggest that we move items, is it
8 and 9.
8 and 9 to the beginning of the consideration items. We have the whole Pacifica Resource Center board out here, and who knows how long it's going to take us to get through any other item tonight. And so it would be, I think, out of kindness to put their items ahead.
So are you suggesting going with item 9 first and then item 8? Item 9 is the TSPP.
8 is the
It is the
bid.
bid.
Oh. I didn't mean the bid.
Okay, so item 9
I
then?
didn't mean the bid.
Or 9 and 10?
Is it 9 and 10?
What, for the items that are about the temporary safe parking
Yeah.
program?
I think that's only item
Item 9.
9.
Item 9.
Okay, only item 9. Thanks for
Okay, oh,
clearing
I
that
thought
up.
you were putting the bid in there too.
No,
All right,
Second.
I'm never.
so the motion is to move item 9. Second,
Can we also move our council communication because we have such a big agenda?
Yes.
100%.
Okay.
And do we need to vote on this change, City Attorney, to change the order of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilmember Wright, a second from Councilmember Beer to move item 9 to the first consideration item and to move council communications and staff communications to the back.
It was my motion, but that's okay.
Oh,
I
sorry.
seconded.
Sorry, City Clerk, I messed that up. Are we ready? Let's vote.
Got the motion made by Councilmember Wright
My
and
already
seconded by Councilmember Beer, and the motion to amend the agenda order passes.
We are
unanimously.
certainly showing our humanness tonight, aren't we?
Christine, did you get a second on your motion?
Oh, I don't think it needed, I think, the moving the council communications.
Yeah.
We stuck it in there.
I think
We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be, but we're not doing that yet. No. We're going to do items not on the agenda. Public comment on items not on the agenda, which are items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City of Pacifica. I have 4 cards, and I'll just give you all, nope. I'll give you the 4 names in the order. Cliff Lawrence, Suzanne Moore, Marty Anaya, and Sue Degree.
Hello, Cliff Lawrence. Council, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, staff. Recently was able to cull through the 1099s for last year. About 90 of them, 94 maybe. So here's what I found. The singular highest expense was, I believe, about 1.7 mil was for our legal counsel. Things drop off sharply after that. It represented about 65% of all the 1099s. And then I looked at the cities that were associated with the 1099s and came up with that 85% of them were clearly outside of Pacifica. So again, I'm often asked what ideas I might have about improving the local economy. Well, here's one. How about we spend more of our money locally? We tell our constituents to do that, to, patronize our local businesses. Why should not the city also make an effort? Maybe you do, and I'm not aware of it. If you are, I thank you very much, but maybe we could do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Moore, Marty Anaya, and Sue Degree.
Hello again, honorable council members and staff. At our last council meeting, we all heard concerns from Sea Cliff apartment tenants, and a recent article in Coastside News also brought their stories to public attention. Although the city feels they cannot directly intervene, the city does have the opportunity to educate us all. Might I suggest a community event that educates all tenants to their rights under existing California law and lists tenant resources if there are concerns. Without exception, I've heard that we all desire safe and affordable housing, protection under the law, and necessary resources to thrive. Other communities have reached out to educate the community. I think Pacifica can do the same. Until we more formally notify our community, I suggest the following: that a tenant report inoperable smoke alarms to the fire department if not readily repaired, that tenants report running toilets, dripping faucets, and wasted water to North County Coast Water District if not readily repaired, and that tenants report habitability issues like inoperable appliances, heater, mold, problems to code enforcement if not readily addressed. In this way, the city can have a better understanding of actual numbers of complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin Anaya, then Sue Degree.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Honorable Council, and staff. Marty Anaya, Pacific Coast Television. Just wanted to let you know, in the last few months, we've started a project at PCT doing a town hall meeting. Some of you have actually come and participated. The first couple of months, we covered some what I think to be very important community topics of consideration. We had CORA, Communities Overcoming Relationship Abuse, in January. And then last month, we had HOPE, Healing Overdose Prevention Education. Both of these town hall meetings are available on PCT, on demand, and of course, on YouTube. This Friday, I would like to invite everyone who can to come. We're going to have another, I think, very important one. The bottom line is it's the age-friendly initiative. I know you guys are talking about that right now. I know that the city is very much behind that. And we're going to have Roy Ernest in the studio at 7 p.m. this Friday. So please, if any of the staff can attend or if any of you council members can attend, we'd love to see you there. And he's going to kind of walk us through in a conversational kind of town hall format what is the age-friendly initiative? How does it benefit local residents? And how can it be of more benefit? How can we, as a community, be kinder and friendlier to our aging community, myself included? So with that, I just wanted to invite you all. I hope that you can make it. It'll be filmed live at the station. That's at 580 Crespi Drive. We're in Unit E. That's the Pacifica Commerce Center, 580 Crespi, Unit E. 7 o'clock. We do ask that you get there a little bit early. We'll have some refreshments if you can come. And if not, please do look for it live on Channel 26, Comcast, and of course, worldwide at pacificcoast.tv. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue DeGree.
Good evening. Yeah, I want to alert you, I think it's on your minds already, but if not, it's been coming. We started talking about this some years ago, and it's the vertical aircraft that's going to be their local taxis and vertiports. We're at the point now where we need to, as a city, and I would say as residents, if I know that residents are concerned about the aircraft noise. We've been working on that forever. And so these things, I have asked numerous times online with the different companies, what about noise? They never answer. I still don't know the answer. But every city is going to be impacted in some way for vertiports and maybe those vertical aircraft noise. And if we don't start speaking up now, we could be caught off guard. Now, in the last time with NextGen regarding the change in the airport aircraft patterns, we did not know ahead of time, and when we tried to say, hey, we didn't know, we were told, too bad, time's up. And what we didn't know at that time for those noises were, if you have open space, you have a right to speak up. Well, we have open space. So I'm very concerned about those aircraft things. I think it's wonderful as long as they don't kill us with noise. And so this community, starting with Fairmont in the beginning, and then after NextGen, which was like a few years ago, it's the entire part of our northern, our mountain, our high area, and turning left to Pedro Point. So it affects all Pacificans, and I think, please get on it because we don't want to be caught like, too bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any hands raised for items not on the agenda?
There's a card.
Oh, please come up.
Good evening, council members. Thanks again. I knew it was going to be a busy night when I saw the agenda this evening. I'll turn in my card after this comment. Kimberly Finale, Pacifica resident, District 3. It dawned on me after listening to Suzanne Moore's comment on the Seacliff residents and looking at tonight's agenda for funding for the temporary safe parking program in partnership with the Pacifica Resource Center. This is a very, I'm looking forward to their presentation, and I don't want to take up too much time, but it occurs to me that even though the city is not able to offer these struggling tenants support, if we don't find a way to support them, they may soon be with these people in the safe parking program. We may find these folks being newly homeless in our city if we don't find a way to educate the community on how to prevent what's happening from continuing to happen. And these folks are teetering. They're teetering right now. They're on the brinks. And they're getting close, and they're not getting the support they need, and a group of us citizens are going to go out and do what we can to support these folks, but for the city to just say, sorry, we can't help you, pretty soon we're going to be helping them. Uh-oh. Pretty soon we're going to be helping them in other ways, and it's going to be when they become homeless if we don't help them to stay in their homes by finding some way to offer some loving and kind support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you could just give the card to someone in the back, that would be great.
We have one raised hand. It is for Irene Lee.
Irene, please go ahead.
Hi, I just want to speak on behalf of the street sweeper. It is hard for the street sweeper to sweep to the curb because there's so many cars parked along the street at the designated time. So I would suggest that the city council, the public work, we send public notice to all the residents to tell them what day, what time the street sweeper is going to sweep, and to ask them to please move their car to another street until the street sweeping is done. And then to give them a grace period of non-compliance, and if they don't do it after that time, then issue all the non-compliance vehicle ticket until they comply or else tow the truck. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you.
There are no other raised hands.
All right, then I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the council and to our agenda. We're postponing council communications and staff communications to the end of the meeting, and that, with the change in the agenda, we're bringing item 9 as our first consideration item, which is funding for the temporary safe parking program in partnership with the Pacifica Resource Center. City clerk is going to give us a PowerPoint. The city manager and executive director Anita Reese are going to give us a staff report. And why don't you go ahead, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Kevin Woodhouse, city manager. I'm really pleased to be introducing and talking about this item tonight, presenting part of it in collaboration with Pacifica Resource Center Executive Director Anita Reese. Ms. Reese is going to cover a summary of the program and the mid-program evaluation, so a lot of details about how this temporary safe parking program over the last 3 years has been very successful. And the item before council tonight is to consider additional funding for the program with a new opportunity that we have in partnership with the SFRV Resort to utilize spaces in that off-street parking space to actually expand and continue the program. And so I'll talk more about that after Ms. Reese goes over the program summary. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to refresh folks' memory about what this current safe parking program is. There was a settlement that included 13 spaces. PRC was included in that settlement to coordinate the program. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get 13 full spaces. We started off in the program with 8 spaces, primarily on Lundy, Oceana, and Milagro. 9th space was created in front of the Water District, but then because of Water District construction, that space was moved into the SFRV Resort. I can't remember exactly, I think February. So it's been a little over a year that we had that space at the SFRV Resort. So this midpoint evaluation really isn't a midpoint evaluation. It was 2 years into the program. But we did do interviews of current folks who are in the program, folks who had exited the program for a variety of reasons, mostly because they moved into housing, city staff. I think we also included somebody from the legal advocates and then PRC staff. And based on that information that was gathered through this evaluation in September of 2024, this midpoint evaluation, again, 2-year evaluation, came about. So if you can, do I have a clicker? Or are you, sorry. Is it here? Okay, sorry. Okay, cool. Right. So again, the key program partners were PRC, the City Council and City staff, Pacifica Police Department, and the PSPP participants. It's the temporary Pacifica Safe Parking Program, but we named it the Pacifica Safe Permit Parking Program. So PSPP for us, TSPP for you all, and for the city. So what we ended up doing, as I said, we interviewed several different people. Our partner was, what was our? Learning for Action was our evaluator. Our overall impact on clients at the time of this report, which was September 15th of 2024, 9 folks from 6 different households returned to permanent housing. 85% of the folks that we served developed plans to return, so their housing plan. They had developed housing plans to return to permanent housing. One of the things that we recognized immediately was that folks felt more stable by having a specific place to park. It reduced their stress. That then gave us some time to really talk about what housing options were there, right? When you're constantly having to move your vehicle, it's really hard to focus on the future, and it's really hard to imagine returning to housing, right? And the longer somebody is unhoused, the harder it is for them to return to housing. So the other thing that we recognize is not only was there an impact on participants, but there was also an impact on the community, right? What we wanted to really focus on was the fact that PSPP participants and folks who live in their RVs are part of this community. And when their their quality of life is impacted, it impacts the quality of life of the community. The other thing is that with the support of the city, we were able to provide disposal of gray and black water, and that then also not only made it easier and healthier for folks to live in their motorhomes, but it also reduced the potential of illegal dumping, right? Because we had this offered not just to people who were in PSPP, but folks who were in motorhomes that could get their vehicles to the location of the disposal. And then we were able to eventually add water, which was another really huge bonus. And then we noticed that over time, there were a few spikes, but over time, complaints from community members reduced, right? They recognized that maybe it wasn't as bad having people close to their homes because folks were went through orientation and signed up for this program and received supports from PRC. There were moments when spikes did happen, and surprisingly, the folks in the program didn't really highlight some of the harassment that they experienced. And I think part of that had a lot to do with the fear of if they shared too much, that maybe this program would go away. And I think that's one of the things that we sometimes forget is that, even though this is a service that we're providing, the reality is that there's a power dynamic by us saying yes, or you saying yes, and maybe saying no, right? And it's something that oftentimes, I talk about, and I try for the services at PRC that we recognize that as much as possible, right? When I'm sitting with somebody who needs services, they're looking to me to say yes, and they're going to tell me whatever they think I want to hear. And unfortunately, what happens is then we don't get at all of the things that we might be able to help them with if they just shared. But there's that fear, right, of being told no. So in the program, 100% of the folks who participated were able to access parking permits. That allowed them to stay in one location. Initially, it was 29 days. Eventually, we changed it to 28 days because it's a lot easier to move people on the same day every month, right? So 29 days means the date moved. Sometimes it would fall on a weekend, and it was really challenging, or a holiday. But by picking a Wednesday and doing 4 weeks after that, it made it a lot easier to schedule the move. 21% of the folks who are in the program received motorhome repairs. One of the things that we recognized is, one, folks needed to have working gray and black water collection and disposal. So those were the things that we tried to address immediately if they had any issue with that. The other things were around quality of life, making sure that the basic services or basic things in their motorhome were working properly. In one case, after some of the major storms, the roof of some folks got really damaged, so we had to fix that so that they could continue to live in it. So those kinds of things were things that we recognized needed to happen in order to just increase the livability of their motorhomes. 100% of the folks who participated accessed wastewater removal and clean water. Like I said, clean water became available in April of 2024, just outside of this building. And then 100% of the folks who participated in the Safe Parking Program were able to get additional resources from PRC, basically our overall PRC services, gas cards, propane, groceries, showers as needed, and other resources, including mental health support. So, like I said before, 85% of the folks that participated received developed plans to return to housing. 82% got housing case management, and at the time of this report, 27% returned to housing. I want to note that 27% is a really good outcome, a very strong outcome. I did a quick review of a couple of other programs out there that had some evaluations done, and the San Rafael program, after I think it was a 2-year review, had a 20% return to permanent housing. And then a longitudinal study that focused on San Diego had something similar to ours, a 30% return to housing, and that was over 3 years, and so this is over 2 years. So just something else that I wanted to make sure folks know, that case management and that service support really led to those positive outcomes, because while the settlement required that a program be created to have safe parking places, when we presented the proposal that you all approved, it included support to returning to housing, right? That had to be part of it. There's some benefit to having a safe place to park. People would naturally probably have returned, but at a much lower rate, because the access to resources is just more limited. You're looking at things within yourself, like within your own circumstances, whereas with case management, we could help develop a plan and start moving in that direction and really helping people see that it was possible. And some of the suggestions from the folks that were interviewed were to the city of Pacifica that 13 spaces be available, addressing safety issues more proactively. I think this is that place where they talked about it but didn't go into too much detail, but it still came up, bubbled up as something that needed to happen. Folks also wanted to simplify participation, dedicate a secure area to have the safe parking program, something that had come up, but we just never had land to do something like that. And then, of course, continuing beyond a 3-year program, because folks recognize that it takes some time to really get to that place where they can move to housing, especially if it's increasing income so that they can afford paying for rent, right? Those things kind of sometimes will take time depending on their work history and ability to work. And then suggestions to PRC was to conduct case management in a more regular and formal way. A lot of the things that we recognized was we wanted to give people in the beginning some time to sort of get used to not having to stress over things about moving. But we recognized that we wanted to start talking about case management and expectations. I mean, expectations were described in the very beginning, but signing a document that says I'm going to do all of these things and actually holding people accountable are two different things. And so we recognized and made adjustments to start those conversations earlier and not wait a couple of months, because at first we just wanted people to feel safe but we recognize that we need to have those conversations within the first month of being in the program. Greater transparency about steps to move towards affordable housing. I think the process in general around affordable housing can feel overwhelming. It's a lot of different information, and it's also not something that you apply once and get in. It is actively applying for multiple places on a regular basis, and that was overwhelming for many people, and we tried to meet people where they were, and so it clearly came out as not as clear on how to get affordable housing, because again, there just isn't enough affordable housing for folks to be able to get into. But when you're in that place and we're saying we want you to return to housing, the first thing is, where's my affordable housing, right? Clarify and communicate expectations for participants more clearly. One of the things we started to do was check in with folks at least annually to go over the program requirements to make sure that they understood, and really started working with folks more deliberately about what's your next step, because this program is temporary, it's ending, so we need to start thinking about what you're doing after this. And then the other thing that really came out